In this lesson, we're going to get acquainted with the Power Query interface. So if you click on the Power Query menu option, you'll see that the Power Query ribbon opens. And as you can see, there's a familiar set of icons that we're used to in Excel that allows us to do different functions and different options within Power Query. So on the left-hand side over here is the ability to get external data. This is really the power of Power Query, where we're able to extract and bring in data from different sources. And as you'll see, we're able to easily transform that data, clean up the data, and do a lot of the things that normally take a lot of time in Excel using formulas to be able to do. We also have the ability to take data from tables within Excel. So if we've got an existing table within Excel that we want to work on, we can use that. And then we've got a couple of nice features over here, the ability to merge and append data. We'll be looking at merging data in the next section. We've also got our Manage Queries. Now if I click on the Workbook option over here, you'll see that it opens on the side here, my workbook queries. Now this will list all of the different queries that that I'm using within this current workbook. And this, you'll see that this is quite a nice, easy interface to work with. We also have something called the locale, which is the type of locale that you're working with. In this situation, I'm based in South Africa, so we're using English South Africa here. Although I often find that for my settings, English United Kingdom actually does a better option. So I'm going to change that to English United Kingdom. We've also got a feature called Fast Combine, but I think in other releases this may not feature as an icon here. Go to your data source settings. This just kind of allows us to be able to easily access some of the data sources that we might be using quite frequently, and you can see some of the data settings that I've been working with. We've also got our options over here, and as you can see, this is really just about, do we want to participate in the customer experience? Do we want to use the standard Power Query load, or do we want to change some of the changes and also some of the cache memory options? So you'd only really use these if you needed to. We've also got sign into organization and feedback. Sign into organization, what we'll see is that Excel is becoming much more of the ability to share and to work together in terms of workbooks. So basically in terms of signing into the organization, if we've got Power Queries being used by other people, we can be able to access their queries and be able to view them and work with them. So this makes it easy to use different queries within the organization. Obviously sending feedback and the help is really just about being able to send feedback back to Microsoft on your experiences with Power Query. So let's have a look at the first example. What I'm going to show you here is what happens if we, for example, go to a database and how we can access different data. I haven't loaded a database within the course itself because the size of the database is quite substantial. You can go and you can actually download the AdventureWorks database, which is the one I'm using. However, in the next lesson, I'm going to be using a CSV file, which is part of the course. So you can use that to learn how to edit and transform your data. Okay, so I'm going to use from database over here. If we just quickly look at some of the other options, we'll see we've got an online search. This is actually really nice. You'll see on my right hand side over here, the online search allows me to put a query in here, and we're going to use this quite a lot. I'm currently connected to the internet, so if I said I wanted to do a search, and let's say I want to see a European electricity consumption. Okay, so we're going to put European electricity consumption, something that we're going to look at a little bit later on. We're going to look at electricity consumption and see how we can use Power Map to be able to work with that. So you can see here we get a list of countries. Now what Power Query does is it goes out and it's looked on the internet at different sources that we can download of information, and it tries to match your search as best it can to the different public sources that it's got available. Now when I go over here, we're using something called the Peak. The Peak is a really nice function. It's showing me now an example of the different data that is over here. So this is a list of countries by electricity. You can see we've got a ranking of country, electricity consumption, year of data, all sources or so. And then we've also got a listing here of the different columns that are used. So as I say, we are going to use this as an example later on to see how we can use Power Map to now map this electricity consumption by different countries. So the online data source is quite a nice one. But now that we're just going to close that, and we're going to go back to Power Query. You'll also see we can use from web. We're pretty used to seeing this in Excel at the moment. We can put a web page URL and we can see if we can download the data from there. We've also got from file. You can see we've got the standard ones, Excel, CSV, from text. We've also got XML, and we can bring in from folders, which can be quite useful. From databases, Those of you used to working with different types of databases, you'll know the SQL Server ones quite well, the Access ones, Oracle, IBM, and so on. These ones obviously require that we're going to log in and have access to these databases in terms of being able to access the tables from behind it. And then you can see from other sources. So Power Query is really working hard at trying to create new types of data sources for us to get data from. So we can see at the top the SharePoint list is quite an important one, as Microsoft uses SharePoint quite a lot. OData is becoming a familiar way of sharing data on the web. We also have the Windows Azure Marketplace. Azure Marketplace is becoming more and more popular for people to put data and to sell data or to access free data. So I would suggest, if you haven't had a look at the Azure Marketplace, go and browse it on the internet, and you'll see there's quite a lot of different data options there. Hadoop, HD Insight, these ones are really dealing with big data type solutions, becoming more and more popular. As is Azure Blob Storage. We also got table storage. We can go to Active Directories, and you can also access your Exchange and even get data from Facebook. So as you can see, there's a lot of different data sources that we can access from within Power Query. So as I said, we're going to actually use a From Database, and we're going to access the AdventureWorks database. So I'm going to click on From Access Database. Okay, so we found our AdventureWorks database over here. You can see AdventureWorks, and it's a Microsoft Access database. So we're going to click on that, click OK. So Power Query now makes a connection to our Microsoft Access database. Obviously, if there's a login and password, it would come up and ask us for the login and password, but there is no login and password for this. So what it's done is it's basically shown us the fact that it's got the AdventureWorks database over here and the 67 tables that are within this database. Now you can go up and down to see these different type of database. You've got a number of sales ones, some production ones, purchasing ones, and some human resource ones. We're actually going to be working with a human resource employee. You also have this option where you can select multiple items. This is really nice. If you want to bring in several tables from the same database, then you could just select these databases over the different tables over here. Just click on them, and then you can click Load over here. In this case, we're actually going to just use one table. So I'm going to use the human resources employee. Again, you can see the peak now is showing me a peak of the data that's in here. So we have our sort of traditional type of details for a human resource master. Employee ID, an ID number, contact ID, manager ID, title, birth date, marital status, gender, hire date, and so on. And a number of different fields over here. And down here we've got a summary of the different columns that we're going to work with. Now once you select the fact that you want to work with your human resources employee, you can actually click on the edit button over here, and this will load it now into Power Query. Now however, because I can't load the AdventureWorks database into this course, what I am going to do is in the next lesson I'm going to show you how we're going to load a CSV file which has got this exact data over here, and we're going to then look at how we can actually edit and we can work with this data. Okay, so this concludes this course in having a brief overview of the Power Query menu option. In the next course we will be looking now how we can load this data as a CSV file. I'm going to start editing and transforming this data.